Are you overwhelmed by all the publications, all the regulations, all the advisory circulars, and all the other stuff that you need to get your private pilot certificate? Well, what if I told you that there's a product out there that could not only prepare you for the check ride, but it's something that you could use throughout your whole aviation career? Welcome to Free Pilot Training. I'm Josh, and this is my friend Seth. He's a designated pilot examiner out of Central Arkansas, and he's got this really awesome product that I'm calling it the Check Ride Cheat Sheet, but really it's a guide for all pilots that they can use throughout their whole career. Thanks for joining me today, Seth.
Happy to be here.
I really appreciate you showing me this and giving me this product. I've already used it quite a few times. A lot of my viewers are student pilots looking to get their private pilot certificate, and one of the things that I think they're noticing is that there is a ton of information that a student pilot needs to know, or really any pilot needs to know to get certificate. And first of all, do you expect a student pilot going up for their check ride to know all the information? And where can I find all this information that I need to know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, short answer is no. I don't expect you to know all of it. I don't know all of it. And that's actually why I developed the guide, is because there is so much information.
Yeah.
And to kind of demonstrate that, we're screen sharing the iPad here so you can follow along. But ForeFlight has a document section that's actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we go to the ForeFlight documents and we open up the FAA drive, you can start to get an idea of how much information is actually out there.
Yeah.
And we can look at just the handbooks folder. There's 26 handbooks, right? There's 4 different legends, 6 chart supplements. So let's look at the handbooks here. Now, if we added up all the pages that are in these 26 handbooks, I guarantee it's over 4,000 or 5,000 pages worth of stuff. So it's humanly impossible to know all of this
It's
information.
great information, but when you look at this, or when I looked at this as a private pilot, I thought, well, what the heck? How am I supposed to know all the stuff I need to know? I'm looking at a myriad of information. How do I navigate through all this data?
Yeah. So if you had a good ground school like yours, you've got some good reading assignments that might come out of something like the Airplane Flying Handbook.
Yeah.
That's a really popular one. And sure enough, it's in the ForeFlight document section. And so the Airplane Flying Handbook, I can search with the search bar here, look at its contents and see, hey, I've got 18 chapters.
Yeah.
So I can see the chapter titles and get kind of a gist of, okay, chapter 6 is takeoffs, departures, and climbs. So if
Yeah.
I wanted to study short field takeoffs, I could get here. I got there within a few taps. But now if I wanted to know, well, how am I supposed to do a normal takeoff during the private pilot check ride? Well, I've got to close this document out. I've got to pull open the private pilot ACS. I've got to go back in and find where the takeoff section is. You can see what I'm saying here.
And there's a ton of documents that tie in together with each other, and finding those is such a battle. And I deal with this all the time when I'm making content, because one thing leads into another. And a lot of times it's like you want to chase this rabbit trail to get all the information, not just like a snippet. But you can't do that without doing like hours of research or Google searching for a long period of time. So yeah, show me how we could do that. And
Yeah. So that hopefully helps you appreciate the amount of data that's out there. So what I've done with the VSL ACE guide, and you've got it downloaded here on your iPad, is I go to my global menu and it's basically a 4,000 page document.
Yeah.
It takes all those 26 handbooks and combines them into one document. And then I put together basically a hyperlink structure to help you navigate that, to cross-reference all the information.
Yeah, and it's an interactive PDF that fits into ForeFlight, and I love that platform because this is the most popular flight planning software out there. This is why, like, my ground course, it embeds into ForeFlight as well. But I like the fact that you can throw it in there and it's highly searchable, and you can just click from one to the other when you need that data.
Yeah, and it's also platform independent. Since it's a PDF,
Yeah.
it works great on a desktop computer. It works on your Android phone, your Apple phone, whatever. Any platform will run a PDF. So it's also highly accessible. Let's go back to the short field landing example. We can start with the private pilot airman certification standards. And again, the link structure is a lot more, I think it's easier to navigate, right? So I can go to my takeoffs and landings, and I wanted to do a short field takeoff. So I go to short field takeoff, and right here at the bottom is a green box, and that links me directly to the short field takeoff and climb performance from the Airplane Flying Handbook. So that cross-referencing feature, now if I want to go back to the ACS, I just hit the back arrow and I'm back at the
Yeah.
ACS. So now let's say that a lot of time is spent preparing for the oral. That
Yeah.
seems to be where a lot of stress comes from is what is the DP going to ask? What's going to be on my oral? The oral primarily comes from area of operation 1, your pre-flight preparation, and there's tasks A through H there that
Yeah.
are typically asked. So starting in area of operation 1, task A, which is pilot qualification, along each line of the knowledge, risk management, and skills, there are links that help you drill down to the source data for that. So if I wanted to know, the ACS just says for knowledge topic 2, privileges and limitations.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you any more context than that. Well, I've actually put in the link to 61113 that
And
talks about privileges and limitations.
because the standard airman certification standards does not have that link to the source document.
Correct. And
So
so now all you have to do is you tap on that and it takes you directly to the ecfr.gov website of 61113, which is the current version of the FARs, and you can read the
right.
reg in its entirety.
And that makes it so much easier because I don't know how many times you see it in the ACS and you're like, well, I guess I'm going to be sitting here for 20 minutes trying to find this item. And that makes a huge difference when you can find data instantly because you can actually, it saves time, and time is money, especially in an airplane.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've also incorporated an example scenario out of the 8900.1, and that's kind of the 8900.1 is kind of that secret document that
Huh.
the FAA personnel and examiners and designees use to do our job. Well, within the 8900.1, there are example scenarios, and we're supposed to, as the FAA, as examiners, we're supposed to use scenario-based evaluation. So instead of just asking you a question of, hey, Josh, what privileges and limitations do you have as a private pilot? Instead of asking it that way, I'm supposed to give you a scenario.
Yeah.
And that scenario might be, hey, for the check ride next week, you're planning on doing a flight with yourself and a friend or your mother-in-law from
Yeah.
point A to B to go to a conference or a wedding, and they're going to bring some wedding gifts that weigh a certain amount,
Yeah.
and this scenario develops a baseline of reason for
Yeah.
you to go fly and for us to ask our questions. So the ACE guide also kind of introduces you to how that scenario-based evaluation might occur on your check ride to help kind of get your mind into that thinking before going to your private pilot exam. Because it might throw you off if you got a CFI that's just maybe a younger CFI, a little inexperienced,
Yeah.
that's just shotgunning you questions.
I
A
think
check ride probably won't go like that.
I think this raises a really important question because I think a lot of times CFIs will ask black and white questions, and or they'll ask you multiple choice questions. But in reality, when you go to the check ride, you're going to be getting asked a lot of scenario based questions. And those are going to be hard to answer because it requires a way to look up information quickly if you don't have that data right in front of you already. And how long, if somebody doesn't have this ACE guide, have you seen where somebody's trying to find the answer for a significant amount of time just searching through the tabs of ForeFlight?
It takes a lot longer than what it takes me because
Yeah,
really I designed this guide because I give check rides at the private through ATP level.
yeah,
And I found myself in any given week, I might give a private, instrument, commercial, ATP, and CFI check ride all in the same week.
yeah,
And the amount of tapping I was doing to navigate all these digital regulations, it was time consuming
yeah,
and it's a big hindrance to my job. So that's what gave me the idea to consolidate everything. So I actually use this document every single time I give a check ride
yeah.
because it helps me navigate the regulations.
So just show me a couple ways really quickly how I could use this guide on the check ride. I know it's for all pilots, but just show me an example of how I could use this for the check ride.
Right. So the global menu is kind of the home page here. And the first thing that might come up, and this is a common question, is can you use this in the check ride? And the answer is yes, because this is all FAA source data, with the exception of a couple of documents that I've customized, and they're clearly stated on there that these are custom documents. Everything is source data. And so if your examiner asks, I've provided a CAO feature. So down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can tap that. Here's all the current document numbers and document date
Oh, that's
for
nice.
each document
Yeah.
in here. And you could easily show this to your currency summary to your examiner, showing them, hey, this is all current
This is the most
FAA data,
version.
right? And so now on the day of the check ride, again, you're going to be using the ACS for your check ride. So assuming you're doing your private pilot, you're going to start here in pre-flight
Yeah,
preparation, area of operation 1. And immediately you'll see there's a FRAT button. Now, FRAT is an acronym, stands for Flight Risk Assessment Tool.
yeah,
So this is the FAA's Flight Risk Assessment Tool, a link directly to that. So I would highly encourage anybody taking a check ride to open that link up and fill it out prior to the check
yeah,
ride. And that checks the box for the risk management
yeah.
standpoint from using a risk assessment.
And because every single tab in the, ACS has risk management in there. That's a part of
Right.
every single.
And so going to that, you have area of operation 1, task A, pilot qualification. We
Yeah,
were just talking about in the risk management section. I have a custom wings program that takes you directly to the FAAsafety.gov website, which is the FAA's approved pilot proficiency program.
yeah,
So when you get to the question here of proficiency versus currency, this guide is going to help familiarize you with how to use FAA wings, which is the FAA proficiency program.
yeah,
And so you're not only able to answer the question of proficiency versus currency that the examiner is going to ask, but you're also demonstrating that you have practical knowledge on how to use the FAA's approved proficiency program.
yeah,
And this guide helps you do that. It also has your personal minimums section. So when the DP asks, "Hey, do you have personal minimums?" Not only can you tell them affirmatively, "Yes, I do
yeah,
have personal minimums," but I've developed them out of Chapter 2 of the Risk Management Handbook, which is right here.
yeah.
And so being able to reference that, there's a lot of private pilots that I bet don't even know that the FAA has a risk management handbook, much less that it has a whole chapter dedicated to developing personal minimums. And so the ACE guide makes that very easy to navigate.
Yeah, and not only that, but if I were to look in the risk management handbook, I would not wanna read it because there's so much data there, but basically you found that valuable piece that fits in the puzzle that I'm looking at that moment, and that's so nice instead of, like, digging through that whole
Yeah.
entire boring handbook because it is boring,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's useful information,
it is.
but it's overwhelming
It is,
more than
yeah.
boring, right? If I hand you a book that has 22 chapters in it, and we just covered a lesson over weather, and I hand you the FAA Weather Handbook, for instance, there's 28 chapters
Yeah,
in the current release of the FAA Weather Handbook. So if I just tell you, "Hey, study the Weather Handbook," and I don't even tell you what chapter,
yeah,
much less what section of a specific
yeah,
chapter, that can be very overwhelming. But with the ACE guide, I can just say, "Hey, I wanna study weather, and I had a question about fronts." So I can easily see chapter 11 is about fronts, and then I can see the subsection of chapter 11, and it takes me directly to the section
yeah,
on frontal activity in the Aviation Weather Handbook. That's way more useful
yeah.
than
Because
just giving you a physical copy or even a digital copy.
my instructor, when I was getting my private pilot certificate, he said, "Here's the weather handbook. Make sure you know this." And I just thought, "I'm not gonna know all this stuff. That's ridiculous." And so I did the best I could, but, it's one of those things, it's like, there's so much data in there too that you don't need to know,
Yeah.
and you don't know what that is until you start looking at products like this. So show me one more example of how I might use this on the check ride.
So another example, there's a paperclip in the top right.
Mhm.
You tap there, there's just additional documents. And some of these documents are advisory circulars that are referenced elsewhere in here. The personal minimums that are in here is a Appendix 4 out of a weather decision-making document from the FAA that I found, and I included it in the document, but not to hammer personal minimums again, but in addition to chapter 2 of the Risk Management Handbook, this is actually an objective little personal minimums that
Yeah,
you could print out and have ready, and it shows you, "Hey, there's a VFR pilot from 100 to 200 hours. Here's the recommended by the FAA
yeah.
personal minimums that are there." So that's something that you might be able to use on the day of your check ride.
Okay. I've been kind of pitching this as a cheat sheet for the check ride, but once again, this can be used throughout your whole career. So show me an example of how a commercial pilot might use this if, they're on a cross country or something and they need to find some information.
Sure. So, I mean, you can search by topical information. So, for instance, if if you knew something was kind of, hey, I think that's in the PHAC,
Yeah.
right? The Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. That's another tome of information,
Yeah.
right? So, really, the Airplane Flying Handbook and the PHAC are the two big
Yeah.
FA handbooks. So if you're like, man, I know there's something about pressurization system. You said commercial,
Yep.
so that's just the system that I picked. So I can look on the PHAC and see that aircraft systems are in chapter
Yeah.
7. And then pretty quickly I can see the pressurized aircraft
Yeah.
section of that. And I can go there and it takes me directly to the pressurization system description. And basically it's not your aircraft's specific type,
Yeah.
but it's the overall, how pressurization systems work. I was able to find that information in 3 taps
Yeah.
versus having to spend significant more amount of time searching
Yeah.
to find this information.
And those handbooks are great because one of the things that I can't remember why, but I was flipping through the PHAC and I just got curious and was reading on the turbine engine section. And I was amazed at how applicable that was to the C-130J.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked because
The
there were,
the newer handbooks have some really good stuff in there.
and they're written so well. They're easy to read. They're free and, they're free if you just download them, but then you have to go through the digging process or storing it separately. And
There's one other thing, that I'm kind of proud of because this is kind of a newer feature I haven't seen anywhere else,
okay.
and that's, have you ever been on, like, Reddit or Facebook and some smarty pants will answer, "Oh, well, that's in the Murphy 2009 legal interpretation."
Yeah.
Have you ever tried searching for a legal interpretation?
I have not,
It
but I've heard people reference them, and I'm like, I don't know how you found that information, but
Yeah.
that must have required a lot of homework.
Can be kind of frustrating. Well, what I've done is there's a legal interpretation section of the ACE guide. And so I've basically consolidated around 30 different common legal interpretations. And so each of these buttons has a very brief description of what that legal interpretation
Yeah.
is. So let's just go with the Murphy. There's actually three, at least three Murphy legal interpretations. And so usually you'll see the LOI is how
Yeah.
they're abbreviated, and LOI referenced as the Murphy 2008. And so we can see right here, Murphy 2008, and tap on that. Now the Murphy uh, 2008 is right here. And what I've done is taken a summary of that LOI. So it's more than just a brief description. It's a little summary of this. And I can see that this is talking about a third class medical certificate if acting as PIC or required crew member per 6123. And then additionally, a student pilot may not fly above a broken cloud layer in reference to 6189A7. If I wanted to read the whole legal interpretation,
You could
I just
actually click on
tap
it
on
and go
it,
to
and it
it.
takes me directly
That's
to the
super
LOI.
nice because I'm trying to find more information. Because one of the big things that I learned about a couple of years ago was logging PIC versus acting PIC, and I think that is one of the legal interpretations because I was trying to see where I was on hours, trying to see what jobs I was eligible for. Because I think one of the interpretations I noticed.
Yeah, it's Murphy too, and you just see here, is it for logging PIC during your practical test, 6147B, and then, yeah, logging, I think that's the one.
Yeah, during a practical
Yeah.
test, so you can actually log the PIC, and there's actually quite a few of them because I saw another one earlier, I don't think it was Murphy, I don't remember what it was, logging versus acting and how they decided that you could log even if you're SIC, like, working for the airlines, as long as you're actually physically moving the controls.
Yeah, the sole manipulators and
Yeah, so
controls. So that could be, the Council 2012. I could see that real quickly,
yeah,
that it discusses the logging of PIC time. But you can see, I don't think there's
yeah,
anywhere
I don't know of one.
where you can get brief descriptions of
Yeah.
the most common LOIs.
So as you can see, this is a pretty incredible application that you can take throughout your whole entire career. There's so many more features, and Seth's got a bunch of how-tos on his channel. You guys should check it out. I'll put a link in the description for his channel. I'll also put a link for this guide in there. What does this product cost, and where can I find this?
So yeah, appreciate you giving me the opportunities there. You can find it on our website, vsl.aero. There's a link to the VSL ACE guide. It's $70, and we've got a pretty good discount worked out for your viewers. So there'll be a special discount code in the link below.
Yeah, put that
Uh,
link in the description. So
yeah, so in the description, take that discount code, type it in, and you'll get your 10% off your ACE guide.
love it. Well, I appreciate you showing me this. I'm going to be using this a lot more, and there's so many features. Every time I'm working on this thing, I see more and more things that I should be using more often. That's just it. Studying, And looking this stuff makes you a better pilot, and researching every little thing that you learn, the 1% rule. If you learn 1% a day, it makes you, in 100 days, you're 100% better than you were before. I truly believe it.
Yeah. One thing I will say, because you mentioned as it updates, this is version 6.5 that we're using today.
Yeah,
It's a one fee lifetime updates.
that's
So
pretty incredible.
you never have to pay for another ACE guide because all of these documents are changing every year. So that's part of my job is consistently keeping it
Yeah,
up to date. Version 6.5 updated the new weather handbook that came out about 2 months ago. And so when those updates occur, you'll get an email and be able to download a free version without having to pay anything else.
that's pretty incredible because I'm editing my own private pilot ground course, and it is so much work to update when I create something new or create a new quiz or whatever the case may be. And so you get that for free, and that's pretty great. So
Yeah, I like to give people value. I like to make a valuable tool. I use this myself, and I just think that's the right thing to do.
I agree, and I think it's important to lead with value, and people will see the value and share it with others. So yeah, I appreciate you showing me this.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, see you guys.
See ya.